As I have told you, today I want to revise Winter of Sweets, the novel. So, I'm going to revise the whole novel, reminding you the basic points. So, in chapter 1, we get to know about basically 3 points: Jagan's routine, Jagan's traditional lifestyle, Jagan and the cousin's relationship. So, we get to know what a traditional man he is. We also get to know, he is very close to Hinduism and the Indian culture, and he's a very simple man. And also, we get to know that with the time, when the chapters are moving ahead, we get to know that he has a son called Mali, and more than with Mali, he has a better connection and an understanding sort of relationship with the cousin, because Jagan's and Mali's relationship, as we get to know in chapter 2, is quite with a lot of disputes and misunderstanding and lack of understanding. Jagan has a lot of hopes for Mali, and especially after the death of his mother, or Mali's mother, Ambika, there has been kind of a distance between the son and the father, but he always wants the best things to happen in Mali's life. So he gives money for him, he wants him to get good education, he cares for him like a mother, looks into his food, etc. But with the time, we understand Mali is someone who is going with the modern context and the modern ideas, and he is very individualistic. So when we come to chapter 3, we understand that Malis has taken a kind of a decision about his education. He refuses to go to college, and he actually has his own future plans. So he wants to go abroad and study about creative writing and start his own life in his own way. Jagan and the cousins attempt to understand Mali and his niece can be seen, because Jagan is the one who tells the cousin to look into what Mali wants, what can we do, etc. And Jagan's bewilderment is also another point that we understand when it comes to the rest of the novel, and especially when it comes to actually this understanding that Jagan is trying to gain. Not that he really understands Mali, but he always, whatever happens, even though Mali blames him, criticizes, or doesn't talk to him, he always wants to do the best for him and know about him as well. And Jagan is actually bewildered or shocked to understand and get to know that Mali wants to go abroad and to be a writer. Because first of all, Jagan actually does not understand what is meant by this idea of being a writer, because he is only clear about the title or the post called clerk. So all his nationalistic ideas come, and he's against the fact that Mali is going to work for the whiter skinned people. But all the things are clarified in the end, and just because of his love for Mali, we later on see that how jubilant, how happy actually Jagan feels about Mali being a writer. He tries to ask what is the language you are writing from. He tries to tell the others, tell the others about his son being a writer. And he also gets this point in his mind when Mali says that, father, I'm writing books, whereas others read books. So like that, Jagan also believes in that and tries to think about his son as a great person. So all of that show that actually Jagan has lots of hope and great care for the son. And in chapter 4, we see that Mali is very happily going abroad, and he did not care whether the father liked it or not. He has already taken his decision, and Jagan also comes to terms with Mali's desire, but he's a little bit worried when the departure comes, because Jagan says you better go by ship because he's scared of planes. So things like that again prove his love for the son. And Jagan also justifies Mali taking money from him because without actually blaming, when the son refuses to go to college, when the son also burns his books, and also when the son steals his money, he justifies all these situations most of the time, because again he doesn't want to blame, because he's subdued, or the indirect idea or the hidden idea in his mind is that poor fellow, motherless fellow, I should never make him sad. And in chapter 5, we actually see a proud father. Jagan is a very proud father who has a son studying abroad, and Mali becomes very communicative because he writes letters. And Jagan has an obsession with the blue airmail letters. He wants to even put them together and make a book. And whoever comes, or sometimes in search of people, he goes and tells them about Mali. And earlier he was a person who read Bhagavad Gita, who had a lot of time for that, but now everything has changed. And then later on, we get to know that Mali comes after some time with a friend called Grace. And even when Jagan understands this is a wife that his son is bringing, without consulting him as an adult, without asking permission from the father, still he adjusts himself, gives pardon to the son, makes everything ready for them, and he always admires his grown-up son. And again, out of sadness and also out of shame, because the son has married a casteless girl, a European girl, and also a person who is not really aware about the culture, who is not suitable for their culture. So thinking about all those things that the relatives might ask, Jagan becomes sad, and he again goes back to his old habit of being obsessed with Bhagavad Gita. And luckily, anyway, Grace is not a bad girl. She actually tries to adapt herself to the Indian context. And later on, we also get to know about Mali's business plans. He wants to start a business where they are distributing story writing machine. So the writer also brings out a social critique indirectly here, because what is the use of such a business? What is the use of such a machine for people in India who have economic issues, who have practical issues more than that? So that is a juncture, that is a point where the writer indirectly tries to raise this social criticism and ask, see, look at this traditional man Jagan. He's so practical, and his legs are on the, or his feet are on the earth. He's a very realistic man. But think about Mali. He has got a better exposure. He has gone to America. He has studied things, and he has got a new business plan. But is it practical? Does he even have the capital to start the business? Does he even know how to talk to the father or to understand him? Right? He's very good in the outside world. He has a very good skill when it comes to speaking and all, but he lacks something like the moral base. So he scoffs at, or he criticizes and looks down the cultural or his own context, his own roots and origin. He says that what the country says, everywhere it is only backwardness that we see. People, before taking a decision, they just talk to 10, 20 people. There's no telephone, there's no there are no good communication facilities, or nothing can be done easily. So he is a person, or he has rather become a person who scoffs at his own tradition. So like that, with the time, we understand how Jagan's and Mali's relationship grows in a kind of a negative way. They don't really get along well. They don't really understand each other, right? So that is how from chapter 1 to 5, we see how things are going ahead. Let's move from chapter 6 onwards. So basically in chapter 6, we see that Mali explains his future plans to Jagan, and Jagan does not understand them properly. Jagan wants actually so much money for all these things. He wishes to get this money from Jagan, right? And Mali had to explain these points for a long time for Jagan. Still, he didn't understand. Jagan had to take the help of the cousin to understand these things, right? And we also see that the Jagan is having a lot of patriotic ideas, but Mali does not have those nationalistic patriotic ideas. He just scoffs at whatever he's not happy with the Indian context, right? But he has a lot of positive things like skilled speaker, talkative, good communicator, makes a prospectus very quickly, makes it ready, right? He's very confident, good at planning, discussing, but he lacks something. He does not try to even understand, especially people from the fathers or Jagan's generation. And also Mali has got a new way of living. He's almost living like a celebrity, and Jagan is day by day depressed about Mali's relationship with him, Mali's lack of communication, Mali's behavior, the way Mali is planning about getting money from him, the way that Mali does not understand he doesn't have that much money, right? So Jagan actually feels that he's sad, he is trapped, he's distanced from the family, and he feels very strongly that everyone is trying to trap him. So that is not a very good sign. He understands that, or he is coming to a sort of understanding that he wants a break, he wants a change. Right. So in chapter 7, what do we see? In chapter 7, we see that Jagan has a kind of a big change done to his shop, and he drastically lowers the prices of the sweets sold because he does not want to collect a lot of money. He has become so sad, and he doesn't actually want this business to thrive anymore, things like that, because he has already gained quite a lot of money. He just want to run this business just because there are some servants or employees working for him, right? And at the same time, this price reduction brings out a little bit of trouble for him, because the other people in the business think that, okay, because of Jagan, our business might be in a problematic situation. So three people, two businessmen and a bearded man, come and they talk about religion, sculpture, business, image making, and all of that. So after this conversation, Jagan actually worries. He thinks about, especially after talking to the bearded man, he thinks about the monotony about his life or in his life, and he thinks that I should have better things. I should have, nicer things. I should have a different exposure, different experience by this time in my life. So, what happens is that on one hand, because of the new strategy and because of the price reduction and because of the low amount of food that is being made in the shop, he gets a lot of time to read Bhagavad Gita, to think, right? And also Jaga seems to be undergoing a great emotional upheaval. So, because of the bearded man, especially, he actually opens his eyes and makes him think about his own life. So, he wonders about having a change in life and to break monotony in life. So, this is sort of a transitional period in his life. So, Mali and his work, especially, have a great impact on the behavior and actions of Jagan. So by the end of chapter 7, we see that Jagan is no longer the money collector, is no longer the greedy man, is no longer the man who always only think about his son. He wants to discover about himself. He wants to have happiness in his life. He feels something is lacking in his mind. So that is how chapter 7 ends. So in chapter 8, what happens? Let's say Jagan goes to see the holy place, which is abandoned at the moment because of the persuasion of the bearded man. Or in other words, Chinnadore. So he talks about his master, his service, simple life, the unfinished work, and then finally, we the readers as well as Jagan understand the whole mission of why Chinnadore came. Right, because he wants Jagan's help, because Jagan has money and he can buy this abandoned place, this land, and then he can help Chinnadore to resurrect the statues, to start the temple again, and to have a nice temple like it was there earlier. And also, while going here and there, Jagan sees a platform, statues, the thicket or the jungle-like area, and finally, he does understand why he has been requested to come here. So they talk about the statue of God Nataraj, and there is this a statue of goddess Gayatri that needs to be resurrected because it's not even completed, right? So bearded man wants Jagan to buy this plot. So he thinks Jagan is the only person who can do this. And also, most importantly, it's like Chinnadore is sent by God. Why? Jagan is also in this situation is in need of a kind of a retreat, or rather a rest. So because of Jagan being very much closer to Chinnadore, he also understands with the advice and the suggestions given by Chinnadore that an old person like Jagan needs a retreat like this to spend his old age without troubling the young children anymore. So, so basically that is what happens in this chapter. And as in most of his other novels, we see that lots of similarities are there, because in the novel, the English teacher, right, and even in some other novels, we see that there are similarities because by the end of most of the novels, we see the main character goes back or rather becomes very, very closer to religion, etc. So we can see that parallel idea as well. And The Guide is another example, another novel by Narayan. Here also, like in Vendor of Swiss, we see spirituality. So the point that I want to make is that in Vendor of Sweets, as well as in most of the other novels, this idea of religion, idea of Indianness, Indian culture, and by the end of most of the novels, the main character going for spiritual search are very common things, right? Are very, very common things, because on one hand, it is the understanding life and experience of Jagan also, because of the writer actually, of the writer also, because he also is a person who was an English teacher, and he lost his wife at a very young age, and things that happened in his life, the exposure, all that made him write with a lot of Indianness in his novels like this. Chapter 9. So let's see what happens in chapter 9. So basically in this chapter, we see that Jagan feels that he is undergoing a drastic change in his life. After meeting the bearded man, Jagan is in a transitional period. Jagan is wondering what he should do. Is it a good idea to buy the plot of land? Mali also directly confronts the father to ask for money for the business, and Jagan bluntly refuses giving money. And Mali is angered, frustrated, and he says that, okay, if you're not giving money, Grace also hasn't got anything to do here, and I also can't afford to keep her. We'll send Grace home. So Jagan feels again like trapped. Jagan actually likes his daughter-in-law quite a lot, because she has brought happiness to the whole house, and she is the one who fills a serious gap in the house, being a mediator between Jagan and Mali. Like he is so worried when he hears that Grace might go. But with the time, Jagan also comes to have a kind of a doubt. Is Grace is also showing her kindness just because she wants to grab my money, just because she's cunning? So with the time and with the things that are happening, Jagan is every day becoming so distressed, worried, and feels like going away from all of this. So that decision is not yet taken, but everything that is happening around him is actually making him take that decision soon. Right. So what happens in chapter 10? So we see a troubled household. Grace confesses that she and Mali are not married, and also she confesses quite earlier that the letters that she sent, that Mali was supposed to send, were actually written by her. Jagan is so distressed, and Jagan is worried about Grace and wants to see her, meet her. He would like to know what deeply troubles her money. The cousin helps Jagan by sending Mali away to Sealand so Jagan can talk to Grace very freely, right? So customs, religion, law, adults advice, nothing is considered by Mali in with regard to this marriage. So Jagan is again very worried. So he is actually this time lamenting over the loss of sanctity or the cleanliness of the whole house. He, being such a patriotic, such a religious person, such a simple person who has thought about culture as the most important thing in his life, culture and religion both, has finally understood that his own son has lived in sin in his own house. He has lived with Grace without getting married. So Jagan thinks that my whole house is blackened, tarnished, and he does not even want to live there anymore. And he asks for help from the cousin. The cousin suggests Jagan to separate the house into two parts so Jagan can live being away from the sinners. And later on, always cousin actually helps Jagan. Later on, the cousin even suggests that, okay, let us find, if Mali does not want Grace, let us find a new bride for him, or let us make Grace and Jagan marry. So even by giving lots of suggestions, always the cousin tries to help Jagan. So he is really a friend indeed. Right, chapter 11, Vendor of Suez. So things get complicated at home. Already there are problems and things become worse actually. Jagan, out of sadness, has few flashbacks. He remembers past incidents, and he remembers especially what his sister and brother have told him some time back. Because of Jagan's beliefs and imprisonment, he has been considered as an outcast. Now there is a similar, or rather a worst issue, because Grace is a foreign and a casteless girl, and there is a problem whether you can, or whether Jagan can accept her as a daughter-in-law. She looks like a daughter-in-law, but she's not, right? Because if people get to know that there is a woman that Mali is having as wife without marrying her according to the religion, custom, and the law of the country, people, people will talk against Jagan. People will ostracize him further, right? So already such other things have made him be away from his brother. So if his elder brother, for example, gets to know this, Jagan will be really in a very pitiful condition. So Jagan is is with a lot of problems. He's really in a pitiful condition. So Jagan and Mali get an opportunity to talk later on, and Mali does not seem to approve the idea of getting married to Grace in order to correct things. And this actually shocks Jagan, and according to Jagan, marrying according to religion, custom, legality will bring sanctity to the marriage. But Mali considers this as a funny notion because he is with the European ideas. If he doesn't want a woman, or if he doesn't want to live with Grace anymore, he thinks he should not even think about that. So, uh, so Mali says Grace is not even behaving in a usual way, and she should be sent to a psychiatrist. Now, again, a problem comes there because Jagan doesn't know who a psychiatrist is, and Mali does not humbly explain that even. And as usual, there is a savior for Jagan because the cousin always helps Jagan as well as Mali. The conversation between the father and son clearly bring out the differences between Jagan's traditions, customs, and Mali's modern ideas. Jagan may be actually believing in old ideas, but he seems to have good values more than his son has. So this chapter also brings out the inquisitive nature of the neighbors. They want to know everything happening in Jagan's house. They come and eavesdrop, right? And Jagan is so scared, thinking that people will ask, what about Grace? Because he can't tell lies, he can't even make up his mind. So you can see what the predicament this caring father who has done everything for the son is going through today.